Welcome to How to Write the Future podcast. I'm your host, Beth Barany. I am an award-winning science fiction and fantasy novelist and a book coach for science fiction and fantasy writers. I run this podcast because I love talking to people about wonderful new ideas. And my whole premise here is about how can we bring our new visions of how we could be in the world and with each other into our stories. So I have a special guest with us today. I'm very excited to introduce you to her, and we're going to have a conversation that I'm sure is going to be wide-ranging and full of interesting, fun things. I would like to introduce you to Brownell Landrum. Brownell, please introduce yourself and welcome to How to Write the Future.
Well, I'm excited to be here. I love your show and I love this whole realm. So I'm a writer. I write fiction and nonfiction. And so the latest thing is I like the idea of how can fiction, which I think is part of what your message really is you're writing the future. Can you write something that's fiction that actually manifests in the future in reality, right? And helps us envision another future. And that's kind of what I did. So I get into my novels are kind of in the realm of kind of in a metaphysical kind of realm. So like I came up with a trilogy a little over a year and a half ago. That's this epic reincarnation mystery and love story about a famous couple from history who's brought back today to fulfill a prophecy, that kind of big epic adventure. And then I have another book that I came out with after that that's semi-autobiographical that I'm sure you're going to ask me about. And then I have a nonfiction book that's new. So I cover a lot of ground.
So wonderful. And let's talk about a semi-autobiographical novel called How the Art and Science of Wishing. Is that the right title?
Actually, the novel's called A Love Story to the Universe.
Okay.
And then that spun off in a nonfiction book that's called The Art and Science of Wishing. So that's kind of how it all worked is like, and you've probably been there that, I was writing this book and was writing it kind of in this fantasy world of what I call upstairs, and these guides that are up in this other realm and they're looking at these humans going, what are y'all doing? And we corral these humans that are doing these crazy things. And so I was writing this book and that's a whole nother thing that I can get into as far as if you want to know more about how that story. And then, it's written in sort of 4 parts. And the 4th part got into, I was creating this realm of wishes and wishing. And I had these wish fairies that were, seeking out wishes and how do you sort wishes? And they had this huge realm. I called it Estrella. And they said they go find wishes and then figure out who deserve, where they go and, the whole world of wishes and wishing. And one thing that's so interesting about science fiction, right, is like there's science and then there's fiction. Well, I kind of bridged that gap in a unique way, I think. So I was doing world building, right? And, I've seen your show when you're talking about the world building and how you have to make some decisions about what's your world. And I'm having to decide what's the difference between a wish, a prayer, and a goal, and so I'm getting my brain on this topic. And then while I'm writing this, sometimes I'm kind of weird and I listen to science lectures to help me fall asleep. So when I can't fall asleep, I listen to science lectures. And one night I was listening to a lecture on neuroplasticity. And it made me wonder, it's like, wait a minute, is there science in wishing? And that led me into this huge, I call it a game of cosmic whack-a-mole, because these sciences just kept popping up everywhere. And that led me to write The Art and Science of Wishing, which is nonfiction, and I researched over 70 different scientists. And so it was really, really fun to go into that exploration of what are the sciences in wishing. And did you know that every time you make a wish, you engage over a dozen different sciences?
I did not know that. So is it because we're using all different parts of our brain and biology and physics and chemistry?
Oh, yes. Yes. There's so many different anthropology, right? With rituals, because usually wishing comes around a ritual, whether it's blowing out candles on a birthday cake or, seeing a time on the clock or something like that. So it just got really, really fun looking at the different sciences. And that's what led me to write. It's kind of like, if you look at some of the episodes like of The Simpsons and then they predicted things that happen in the future, you're like this idea of wishes. And then I was like, wait a minute, how do I learn from that? How do I apply the science to that? And then how do I bring that into the world to create a better future, right? So that ties into your whole theme is like, because the theme of my novels is lose yourself in the fiction, find yourself in the truth.
That's beautiful. As you were working on your nonfiction book, did you notice this operating in your own life, or did you make some experiments on yourself around wishing and then go, oh, look, look what I manifested, or any kind of things like that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, because the way I look at it is like, I'm very clear. I'm a storyteller, not a scientist. Right. And when I meet people that are scientists or people are listening that might be scientists, I'm like, I respect you. If you got questions or concerns or improvements or any, corrections or anything like that, I'm all ears. And so I feel like I'm like one or two steps ahead of most people because I've done the research, but I'm still kind of learning as I'm going through this. And when I was first writing it, like I said, the fiction book, the A Love Story to the Universe, I was making wishes myself. And I was like, wait a minute, this is an unusual way to make a wish. What's the impact? And it led to this kind of question of what would happen if people stopped wishing, you know? And that's that kind of the fantasy world, right? Is that there's a crisis on Earth where the main character stops wishing. She flips the script on wishing, and then all of a sudden there's chaos upstairs because what would happen? And it's happened before in history, and so they have kind of these experiences where there could be a whole system shut down. And so that's kind of the jumping off point is what would happen if we lost it. And so that was part of the exploration. And then the next part of the exploration is what would happen if we started wishing together?
Which we kind of do in our collective rituals that we do through religion, through sports, through song, through performances. You could even call all of those collective rituals.
I talk about the 4 responses to a wish, and they're yes, no, wait, or something better. And so when you ask, like, am I experiencing this? Yes, there are things that I'm experiencing it and learning my own process of the sciences to apply the sciences to the wish and watching my own world expand. And one area I think you probably really like is, in fact, I'm getting ready to do a TED Talk. And I'm super excited. I'm going to be talking about this, and I'm going to be talking about something called the default mode network. And as a creative person, you know what that is, right? When we get into this mindset and we're trying to come up with something, it's hard. But then we go wash the dishes or take a shower like Aaron Sorkin, you probably know that his thing is when he's in writing mode, he'll take 7 showers a day sometimes just to get into the default mode network. So it's just fun stuff. The science is fun.
I like washing the dishes, and I also like walking. Walking is key to my writing ritual. And then sometimes it's self-talk. So walking and talking before I sit down to write.
Right.
Yeah.
And then sometimes if you're writing and you get stuck, right, sometimes those little breaks, and what's happening in the brain is turning off one part of your brain and turning on another part. And that's what the default mode network is. So you think, oh, I'm zoning out. And especially if you start out with a wish. So I think here's a ritual for your writers is start it with the wish. What do you wish for this book? What do you wish for this story? What do you wish for your audience? What do you wish for your characters? And write from there. And then all of a sudden you're going to see it's going to turn on something called the reticular activating system, which is going to be looking for those stories. And then the default mode network happens in a different level of the brain that says, okay, well, I'm not thinking about it is when the ideas come. Yeah. And then you have to capture them when they do, right? Because sometimes they go and come and go. And then we're like, those middle of the night ideas we need to, write down, or voice record is what I use.
Yeah, I was going to say voice recording is great. Writing them down. I have a lot of pencils and notepads by my bedside because pens don't always work. And a pencil will work even if you're like lying on your back trying to write upside down. Yeah. And getting into the habit of capturing your ideas as they come. That's great. I love those questions. They are core to anytime I'm stuck in the editing process, I go right back to those questions in terms of what is the story really about? What does my character want? What do I want as an author? And what do I want my readers to experience, and what are they reaching for? So those are such great core questions. So understand you've got the novel that led into the nonfiction book, and then you said there's another, is it a fiction that you have after that?
Before that, that's the big epic reincarnation mystery and love story. It was a trilogy. I've written over a dozen books. So it's like, well, which one? Because I do have a tetralogy, which is 4 books of a more like a love story, but it's a metaphysical, going into past lives, and then the fantasy of that. And then the most recent one, it's called We Meet Again, and it's a trilogy. And then who knows what's next? I've written a bunch of screenplays, a couple of screenplays that I'm halfway in the process of writing. One's a young adult kind of adventure kind of thing. And it gets, it all gets into the mystical and metaphysical and things like that. So it's fun.
I love how creative you are too in working on scripts. So When you are out and about in the world, do you offer any goodies or freebies or anything that people can go, ooh, I want that? So people can sign up for, do you have a newsletter people can sign up for?
Yeah, you can read the Love Story to the Universe is written in 4 parts. So the first part I can give to your listeners for free. And if you want to read the first chapter of The Art and Science of Wishing, I can also offer that.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, be sure to give me the link for that. So we'll be putting that, everyone, in the show notes. And people can find you at brownelllandrum.com, right?
That's right. I'm the only Brownell Landrum, so I'm on all the social media, and I'm going to be building my YouTube channel. Look for that because we're going to be having some fun things with what I call cosmic wishes, and it's going to be really, really cool. So please stay tuned for that.
Well, as we finish up, I love to ask my guests this question out of the blue, but not so much, which is, when you think of how to write the future, what does that make you think of?
It makes me feel like there's a responsibility to deliver something that has enough meaning and purpose. Like I talk about cosmic wishing needs to be peaceful, positive, and purposeful. And if it's purposeful, then you can actually guide people toward a better future and more positive future.
I love that. I love that. Well, thank you so much, Brownell, for coming on today at How to Write the Future podcast. And I just want to say to everyone here, write long and prosper. Bye.